really, really excited. So Brenda and I met Robert through Vet Partners. And we met him, we were first years together, right, Robert? We both joined at the exact same time. And it was fantastic. And we've been having conversation with Robert, you know, over the course of the past 2 years. And then Brenda and I found ourselves in a position where we desperately needed his help with our own website. So we said, hey, love to see if you could help us out, but we'd also love to help you out because we love the message that you're bringing forward. And he's actually going to talk a lot about that tonight. I had the fortunate experience of spending a good hour with Robert yesterday going through the run of show on this, and he took me in directions I didn't know we were going to go in this conversation. So I got even more geeked up about the whole thing. What I didn't know about Robert was that he actually came from Vetmetrics. I just thought he was like this, like, you know, wizard child that came up and like knew everything about, you know, building websites, etc. But actually really wickedly smart. And so we're going to talk a lot about Amazon tonight, but he's going to take us in a direction I think that we're all, for those of us, because I know a couple of, who all went to VIS? Did everybody on this call go to VIS? There is a lot of relation to VIS in this one, but if you didn't go to VIS, you're not going to be lost. I'm just going to harpen back to Bruce, something that you guys presented in yours, as well as what Dean Green brought up as well. So Joe, good to see you as well. Deb, hopefully you'll put on your computer. Oh, sorry, Brenda.
No, before we launch into it, I do have to say though, speaking of VIS, God, this is how we really got to know Robert. Catherine and I were trying to do a selfie video last year at VIS.
Oh my God, so yes.
And we couldn't get the angle right. So Robert's across the table going, can I help you? So he literally did the video for us from VIS last year, which turned out to be a phenomenal video. He had the right angles because we looked tall and skinny and it was perfect.
Well, and because he's so much taller than us. And then I had the benefit of actually going to his office in Carlsbad, California as well. So we have gotten to know Robert very, very well. So with that, I do want to turn it over to Robert. So everyone raise your glass, get your beverage ready so that we can definitely start this off on the right note. So Robert, I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Catherine. And thank you everyone for being here. And first, I know the inaugural toast is important. So I'd like to toast you all to thinking differently.
Cheers.
Thinking differently. Cheers.
And I'm so glad everyone drank because they forget so many times.
I'm a queen of that.
Yes, yes. Okay, let's dive in. This is going to be fun.
So the first thing I want to say is I don't want this to be a lecture. You know, what's nice about having this intimate of a group is we can make it a real conversation. So please, by any means, if you feel there is a juicy point to talk about or have a question, that's what I'm here for. So the topic of this conversation is, what can we learn from Amazon? And, you know, I think at the outset, the reason I was a little concerned about this topic is Amazon is very obviously a different business from veterinary practices, right? Amazon sells a commodity. Veterinary practices do not sell commodities. And what I think it makes it so intriguing, though, is there's a kernel to learn from Amazon. When a company is this disruptive and this large and this successful, it doesn't happen for an accident. And usually there are a lot of reasons there. And what I'd like to do is distill into one of those major reasons that I think there is a lot of green grass in front of veterinary practices to explore. So first question for you all tonight is, who remembers getting the Sears catalog?
Some people are like, what's Sears?
So Clint, so wait, that's Joe, right? Joe, you didn't get it? You didn't get the Sears catalog? I thought you did.
No, Joe pays our Zoom bill, so his name defaults on our account.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm back. I like to build suspense. So, who remembers getting the Sears catalog?
We all did.
Yeah. Right? And what'd you do with the Sears catalog?
circled pictures of things I wanted.
Yeah.
Use doorstop.
All right. Next question for you is, when was the last time you bought a product from Sears?
Oh. Does my refrigerator filter count?
So here's the interesting thing is Sears was built to be Amazon before there was Amazon, right? Look at what they had. They had the circulation. Everyone got the Sears catalog. Everyone here on this call knows exactly what I'm talking about when I ask, you get the Sears catalog. They had the network, right? They could ship their products anywhere. They had that all built up, and they had the products behind it. They had everything that Amazon had. But Sears is almost dead. They filed for bankruptcy recently, and they just got barely bailed out. Amazon, I mean, Bezos is he's the richest man on earth, and Amazon is one of the most valuable companies on earth. What happened? So what happened is the grain of insight that I'd like to talk about. I think what happened is Amazon understood their customers better than their customers understood themselves. They understood that we love dopamine, right? We look for it. That feeling that we get with instant gratification, the delight it involves, the feedback loop that it creates. We don't love Amazon. That's not why we're here, right? We love dopamine. And that's what Amazon does. It's a factory of dopamine. Every time that you get on Amazon and you click, yes, get me my product within 2 days, it gives you that little jolt and it feels good. And there's something almost addictive about it. So what Amazon did really, really well is they understood their customers and they designed everything with their customer in the middle of the experience. And they said, let's lose everything that comes between that and get right to the heart of what makes our customers tick. So that is a lesson that I think can be applied liberally to veterinary practices. And it's something that does not require us to get into retail. It's something that can be involved in really every interaction and every component of our strategy. So the next question I'd like to ask you all is, what do you sell? Deb, we can't hear you.
You're asking us what we sell, like what our businesses are?
Yeah, what do you sell?
Okay.
What do you
Software well, I mean, it's not sexy, but I think you're looking for something sexy, but software as a service.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, anyone else?
In veterinary medicine, you're selling an experience. You're selling, you're identifying the needs and expectations and fulfilling those needs and expectations within the boundaries of creating an experience.
Catherine and I sell connections on the Bridge Club.
Yeah. I would say in a practice though too, I think we sell healthcare. I mean, it's on the most basic bottom line. I want to help get.
The basic,
the baseline. Yeah.
Those are such insightful answers. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, I have another question for you. What do people buy?
That's where I think Deb's got it right on the nail, right? They buy experiences.
Yeah.
I think and that was such a great answer, Deb. I think, to be precise, we buy a feeling. We buy feeling a particular way about something. That's the only reason why we ever do anything, right? It's that whole Freudian pleasure pain principle. Like if something makes us feel good to buy it, we'll do it. There's something addictive about that, right? It's again and again, it's that dopamine feedback loop, and it can get a little more complicated than that. But the essence of it is that there's this kind of divergence between how we're communicating to people, what we're selling, and what really they're there for. So I'd like to talk about what we can be doing that gets people to feel the right way, that creates stronger relationships with veterinary practices, that wins loyalty, that wins brand advocacy, and can help a practice thrive. And it's not just a veterinary practice. I think it's any business. If you approach this from the the perspective of, okay, I realize that what we sell is a product in, a primary sense. What people buy is how it makes them feel. And that's what the greatest brands understand. If you look at an Apple ad or a Nike ad, they don't sell a product, they sell a feeling. And that's what I would like for us to orient ourselves around. So what I think people are looking for when they're engaging with a business, really two things. There's kind of what our conscious mind justifies itself. It justifies us being there for, where we're asking logical fact-finding questions. So if you're a veterinary practice and you ask somebody what they're looking for out of a veterinarian, they'll probably say, well, I'm looking for somebody who's close to me, who's good at what they do, who's reasonably priced, and maybe who treats me well, right? But I think if that person were honest and insightful about why they're really there, they would give you a totally different answer. They would say, I'm looking for someone I can trust. Like really everything we do socially as a social animal is supported by the feeling of trust that we have. That's what we look for. And it doesn't matter if it's in person or it's online. The way we are hardwired is to unconsciously scan our environment all the time, look for threats and look for assets, right? And so the thing about trust is it's not a logical calculation, it's a feeling, it's an instinct. It happens below the conscious level, and all you're going to feel is kind of a pity or gut sense of the situation. So who's had the experience of walking down a dark alley or engaging with a mechanic and something feels off and you feel a little bit uncomfortable, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Trust was absent.
Yeah, I've had that experience on a tuk-tuk in Thailand.
That was our mistake, Clint, for getting on that tuk-tuk in the first place.
For sure, yes, definitely.
Yeah. So trust was absent, and that's all it is, right? That's what we look for, and that's why somebody will drive past other veterinary practices to get to a place where they already feel that. So trust emerged as this marker for our world because it was literally a survival imperative for our ancestors to find people who, when there were threats, they knew we'd have their back. And if we couldn't find those people, we probably didn't procreate. Now, the reason why trust is so powerful and why you need to put trust like right next to the center of the experience that you're designing in everything is because it's not actually about trust, it's about a feeling of safety. We as humans, here's the cool thing, we all want the same things. We do. I mean, we have we like to distract ourselves with all these differences that we feel we have, but it's all bullshit. We're all the same. Like we all want safety. We want status. We want to feel like we belong, and we want love, right? And that's it. Now, what the best brands do is they make you feel those things at the deepest levels. And so that's kind of the kernel that I'd like to talk about today is how do we go from an industry that just sells veterinary medicine to an industry that really speaks to the deeper needs of humans? And if we can get really good at that, we can be real pioneers. And so safety is not just physical, it's emotional as well. So let me ask you this. So who knows a practice that has an employee retention problem? Right?
Yes, exactly.
Anybody have a story to share around that?
I think it's the data that we heard at VIS, what is it that the average technician now is only staying in the profession 6 years and then they're out?
5 years.
Five.
Yeah.
Sorry.
5 years, yeah.
So you just look at that, and that alone screams volumes of the challenge that practices across the United States are facing. If Stacy Purcell were on this, she would be talking about how people are jumping jobs as veterinarians as well. So yeah. I think there's a great deal across the board there.
Yeah. And so that's such a wonderful statistic to bring up. And I think a little differently about this. I don't think that it's primarily a problem of compensation. I think retention is a problem of safety. I think as an industry, we are not doing a good job of making our employees feel safe. When people leave, it's because they don't feel their environment has their best interests at heart. They don't feel protected, not just physically, but emotionally. And if we live and work in a place where we feel there are constant threats to our emotional state, it does not make us feel good. And so what I think we can start doing as an industry is start designing environments for employees and for customers and for pets. Fear Free is doing this right now, right? This is the whole reason behind Fear Free, for people to start feeling safe in these environments, for you to start creating an experience that lets them know that this is not a place of judgment. This is not a place of accusations. This is not a place of tension. This is a place built for you. This is a place where you can walk in and feel safe and know that your problems are our problems. If we did that at the highest levels of the industry, as as leaders of a veterinary practice, as employees of a veterinary practice, the ramifications would be astounding. Now, the second thing that I think we all want is status. And it's pretty simple. We want to respect ourselves, and we want the people who we respect to respect us. And in our minds, we all have an ideal version of ourselves. And here's the interesting thing about people. People are really complex, and usually, any business is trying to solve problems. Right? Now, where I think we go wrong as an industry and as entrepreneurs, even outside of veterinary, really everyone, is we only try to solve the most superficial layer of the problem. So for a veterinary practice, what is that superficial layer? It's that I need a vet, right? That I need healthcare for my dog or my cat or my bird or my guinea pig, whatever a pet I love. That's the tip of the iceberg. Right? What's the internal problem that we're looking to solve? Anybody have a guess?
Position within our community.
I think that's a really, really insightful response. I think.
So what did you say, Clint? I missed that.
Position within our community, right? Like some sort of, and not just position, because that could be mean many different things, but a position that provides you value or meaning within your own community.
Yeah.
So belonging?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think everything here is very closely interrelated to each other. Now, I think if we look at this internally, and we really want to know our community thinks highly of us, and I think that's definitely on our minds. To me, the internal problem that a hero faces, and that's how we all want to feel. We want to feel like heroes. Is, am I good enough? That's it. Like, am I a fraud? Am I a failure? Like, can I run with the big dogs when the chips are down? Do I got it? And as a pet owner, I think my internal insecurity is, am I doing right by my pet? Like, I know that when my pet looks at me, they don't see my faults. They don't see my imperfections. Like, they see somebody with a cape. And am I doing right by that adoring companion that I have? And so I think as a community, as an industry, to provide this kind of environment where not only do you feel safe, but where we're communicating, you're doing right by your pet, you did all you could, or you're doing all you can, and her love is justified. That fulfills a deeper human need that we all have. And then the third layer to the problem is philosophical. And I think we should be really good at communicating what this love means, and the fact that, yes, it does matter. I forget, at a previous Vet Partners meeting, somebody was saying the attrition rate for clients after they see a euthanasia was something like 25%, which is crazy. And it's because sometimes, the way it's handled is so callous because it happens every day at a vet practice, right? Like I remember hearing a story of a dog being taken out in a trash bag. And what does that tell me? It tells me that my pet's life isn't really worth much, and the love that I felt for them isn't really worth much either. And how devastating is that for me as a person that just wants to feel like what I'm doing matters? So the third is belonging. We want to feel connected to our community. We want to know that we're in the right place, right? So when somebody walks into a practice and you can say, I built this for you, I built this for people who think of their pets like family, that does something really powerful for us. And the fourth is love. You know, we all want love in our lives. Like we want to feel connection. We're hungry for it. We're hungry for people to say that they care about us and that our needs matter, and to communicate that both verbally and non-verbally. And so, you know, what I'd like to talk about is how do we start applying this? I think there are a lot of ways for us to use this in the practice as far as treating our employees differently and starting to design systems around, okay, how do we build an environment that makes people feel safe, that makes people feel like they have a sense of status, that makes people feel like they belong here to a real culture, and that makes people feel like they're loved and that they can love the people here. And it goes with the way that we communicate, the gestures that we make, just small interpersonal interactions throughout the day that show me that, yeah, this is what this is all about. Now, my world is marketing, and that's where I've spent the last 6 years. So I think where I can be most practical and concrete for everyone on this call is how do we apply this from a marketing perspective in our communications? So the mantra that I think that we should live by is speak differently. I think the way that everybody in the industry communicates speaks to a very superficial part of our minds. And let me give you the example that I gave at the Vet Partners Hot Rocks talks. So I'm going to give you two different examples, two different styles of communication here, and I would love to hear how it makes you feel. So the first style is welcome to ABC Animal Hospital. We're a full service veterinary facility. We provide preventive care, spay neuter, parasite control, and more. Give us a call and come on in, right? Now, who's heard a marketing message, something like that before? Right? And now what's it make you feel when I say that? How do you feel?
Nothing.
Nothing, right? Maybe a little bored. Yeah, it doesn't make me feel anything either. And so I think, yeah, thank you, Jeff. Yeah, me too. And so I think the reason why we're not feeling anything there is actually very simple. It's because we're speaking to a particular part of the brain. We're speaking to the cortex. The cortex was the last part of the triune brain to evolve. It deals with language, it deals with logic, it deals with reasoning. It's there to kind of be that executive function for the rest of our mind. It's super valuable, but it doesn't make us feel anything, and it's not the seat of decision making. So is there a way to communicate deeper? Is there a different region of the brain that we've been failing to engage? And so here's the second style of communication. She's there for you when life is hard. She's there for you when work is stressful. She's there for you when you need a friend. Now, you get to be there for her. Give us a call and let's protect her together. Now, how many veterinary practices do you know that communicate like that? None? And
I will say that one gave me like little chills on the back of my neck when he was saying it. So I was kind of like, I want that practice.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. So it makes you feel, right? And that's why, and that's the number one rule of good storytelling. Make me care. Now, if you don't make me care, you really don't have a good shot at my business, especially because of how complex and diligent the modern customer journey is. It's very standing out in this age of corporatization and commoditization has become quite difficult. And what we need to do as an industry is we need to start facilitating a totally different type of communication so that we're actually speaking to the region of the brain that controls decision making. That's it, right? That's the secret. We've just been totally tone deaf to the way that people actually work. We've thought that, well, hey, if I tell them I'm a veterinary practice and I provide what you need, that'll be enough. Because the thing is, I don't really need veterinary medicine. I need to care. I need you to make me feel a certain way. And that is the kernel of insight that Amazon took with a totally different business model that we need to be adopting as an industry right now. Is that the challenge is totally different than what we've been thinking about. The challenge is merely how do we make people feel a certain way, and what is that way that we need to make people feel. So what I would do as all of you, as veterinary practitioners, as thought leaders in the industry, is I'd start thinking about what do we need pet owners to feel? How do we start strategizing about these different categories that we're all looking for from our environment and from our social groups? And how do we apply that to create a better world for animals and animal lovers? So that is the topic that I'm so passionate to bring to you today. And I see that I'm out of time now. So thank you so much. And I appreciate you all being here.
So for those of you who need to drop off, please feel free to, but we will continue kind of our after party for a little bit longer. You all can unmute. I know we were getting a little feedback there, so I was muting people, but please feel free to unmute. And one of the things that when Robert and I'm going to jump in first, when Robert and I first started with Brenda talking about this topic, I really thought it was going to be very much more technical. And then as we kind of went down more of this emotional side, I was kind of surprised by the whole thing. It really, I was like, Brenda, this is your topic. And I really loved it, but it really hit me on something that Dean Green said at VIS. And Dean Green was talking about getting our staffs to be more engaged in solutions for the practice that put the pet owner first. And in my day job, we all know that both Brenda and I have day jobs. I am actually dealing with a challenge, and I have been, really ever since I talked to Dean Green about it, been thinking about it a lot since VIS, and then having this little conversation with Robert is starting to kind of formulate a much more concrete solution that is going to be broadly created, but it's going to put that feeling first. And I don't think we go wrong if we lead with feeling. I don't think we do. And it's interesting to me because I'm very like, what's the reputation risk? And so I'm actually going to lead with feeling first before the reputation risk and see where that takes us. So for me, I'm very grateful for this conversation because it's helping add some clarity for me. I think it's helping Brenda and I too, as we're trying to create something very different for the industry overall. So for me, thanks so much. This has been fantastic.
Yeah, you're so welcome. That's an honor.
Indeed. So I saw a lot of heads nodding as Robert was talking throughout the conversation. So questions for Robert or any key points that particularly, Catherine, that was so well stated. I can't help but say a little bit, it's like, I'm kind of rubbing off on you a little bit now.
Well, yes, you are.
But
So,
I would love to hear from the rest of you too.
can you hear me? No?
Yeah. Hi, Mike.
Or Cindy has a comment. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, well, first of all, thank you, Robert. I loved that Hot Rock speech, and I loved hearing these same ideas again. And I definitely think it's always surprising to me how it doesn't get applied to the pet owner and the marketing more. I do see that maybe not all, but many practitioners, probably without thinking about it in the way that you described it, actually do apply that to pet owners.
Yeah.
And that is how we gain their trust. And I do think that that is applied. But where I think it's not applied is with staff and I think owners and managers could learn so much by applying those ideas to the staff, like you suggested. And because retention is a huge problem, and I have heard on more than one occasion in more than one clinic an owner say to the staff, you are replaceable. And so you were speaking about safety, I was like, you know,
Right.
atmosphere. And I can feel, you know, going into so many different practices, I can feel the moment I go into that practice, what the vibe is like, and if those people feel safe, and if those people like being there.
Yeah.
No one needs to say a word. I don't need to see a single interaction. I can feel it.
Yeah.
And some are horrible, some are really good, and then most are in between. But I think that to me, that is really where this needs to be applied. So
Yeah. That's such a wonderful point, Cindy. And you know, if I could just quickly address that, thank you for bringing that up. And I agree. And you know, Richard Branson has a saying is, you know, our job as leaders is not to take care of customers. Our job is to take care of employees. Like when we take care of our employees, they'll take care of the customers. And what I think would be so cool and so powerful is if we started thinking like Amazon from a systems-based perspective, and we started thinking, okay, what are the real needs that everyone has here? And how do we build systems and workflows and processes around fulfilling what those needs are?
So Robert, so I really like the way you talked about the feeling as what the driver is, because that's something that I learned sort of later in life, and so I'm passionate about that. One of the things I learned in a previous job is we actually had a behavioral marketing behavioral person, you know, behavioral marketing, right?
Yeah.
And so he did some work for us, and one of the things he did is he actually engaged in discussions with pet owners about the veterinary visit. And what he learned was that the vast majority of pet owners had this great anxiety about going to the vet the moment they got in the car.
Yeah.
And that, you know, translated all the way through to, you know, getting out of the car, going into the waiting room, checking in, the exam room, the whole thing. So what suggestion would you have for how to, you know, recognize and address that feeling, to make a shift in the feeling, knowing that most people are actually coming there, even if they like the vets and they like the place and like the culture and all those wonderful things, they still have anxiety going there.
Yeah, Mike, first off, wonderful to meet you. And thank you so much for that incredibly thoughtful and valuable question. And if I can regale you all with a quick story to answer it, I was actually just at the vet. I was at the vet 2 days ago. So I have two little dogs, Cole and Lula. Cole's an 8-year-old puggle and Lula's a 6-year-old Maltese. And I love them to death. You know, they're my world. I would sell my car for them in a heartbeat. I would do whatever it took to
just your car?
Yeah, I was so Cole had a little bit of discharge on his penis, and I, being the millennial I am, called my vet and then Googled, okay, so what could this be? And I saw, you know, I was going through the list and I saw pretty routine stuff, and then I saw just thrown in, oh, by the way, you know, maybe it's cancer. And so I felt so, I couldn't really sleep the night before. When I woke up, it was like, anybody who knows that feeling of loss, it's like that moment you wake up and then you have to remember that this is all happening again, right? Even though this was just probably, you would all tell me this is nothing to be concerned about, I felt it because of how much I care for Cole. And the entire way there, I was thinking, oh my God, I want to feel better, but I don't know what's going to happen. Like, is he going to be okay? And all these anxious thoughts running through my mind. And I got there. I waited in the waiting room for almost an hour, just Cole and me, and Cole was kind of freaking out because there are other dogs there and he's very skittish. And then I got into the room, and you know, I had the doctor come in and he looked at Cole and he was like, oh, you know, he's going to be just fine. Like he's, this is a low grade staph infection. All you need to do is clean it like once a month and he's going to be totally good. He did an ultrasound and drew some blood just because he just turned a senior anyways. But I spent that entire time, about 12 hours from the front end of it to getting into that exam room with the doctor, in fear. I did not feel safe. Like, how different would it have been? So first off, I think as a profession, we need to get phones out of the reception area. Like, I think that should be one of our first orders of business, because that's one of the best things that the front desk staff can be doing, is making people feel comforted, making them feel like they're the only person in the room, making them feel like they belong. Like, what would that experience have looked like if somebody had engaged me and said, hey, I know how much you love Cole. I want you to know that we take care of pets here. It's why we exist as a practice. You're doing the right thing, and Cole's going to get the care he needs. Right? And really spoke to the emotional layer of my visit, instead of, okay, you know, come on in, check in, take a seat, and we'll call you when you're ready. Right? This entire experience needs to be architected around empathy, around what is this person feeling at this particular time, and how do we make them feel in a way that makes them feel safe, that makes them know that they're doing right by their pet, and that makes them know that they're in a place where they belong. So I think there's a lot to that, and it mostly goes along with team members being really sensitive and watching how people are feeling, and then just addressing that and having empathy as a human. And I think if we did that at all layers, from our marketing to that first phone call, to the moment somebody walks into the door, and throughout the entire visit, we would change the way that people view going to veterinary practices. Did that answer your question, Mike? Like, what would me?
Could
Well,
I throw?
you know, it's very situational.
Yeah.
Some other research that we did showed that, you know, pet owners have different attitudes about their pets. So some people really love their pets. Some people like their pets.
Yeah.
But don't necessarily, you know, see them as human extensions. And so really being able to, as you say, empathize and somehow get the insight of what is the person's attitude towards the pet, what's the attitude about being at the practice. And I love the idea of getting the phones out of the waiting area, because, you know, it's like, okay, they're doing their business and I'm just here waiting, as opposed to if you walked in and it was all about you, whatever your, you know, perspective on that was. And everyone's going to come in with a different perspective.
Yeah. And I just thank you. And, you know, I'd like to ask a question, like, what if instead of just medical trainings, we did empathy trainings? You know, we're all instinctually empathetic animals. It's how we work. We all have that within us. It's just paying attention, right? Like everything else our minds can naturally do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Clint had one, and I thought Deb did too. So I want to be sure they're jumping in.
Yeah, so just a couple points. The first one is I find that it's interesting that Amazon was the model, because I feel that Amazon and Walmart, which are the two largest retailers in the world, have traditionally horrible employee satisfaction rates. So I think when you're a business that size, you get to a point where you're just a machine, and the value that you provide is overlooked by the community, or like the value provided to the overall consumers. The consumer then overlooks all the tragedy that's going on inside the business.
Yeah.
But then also, I think another interesting point is to the NAVTA study that came out in 2016. It mentioned that vet techs, I'm very fascinated with the question of why vet techs are leaving the industry. And it was interesting for me to see that I guess to kind of validate your point, is that the reason that they're leaving is because the biggest challenge they face every day is just support from ownership.
Yeah.
So when they list the reasons that they leave, number one was pay, number two was lack of support from ownership, and then three was burnout.
Yeah.
But when you look at the challenges that they faced every day, they didn't think that getting more money was a challenge.
Yeah.
Every day, they feel like they can get more money. The biggest challenge they face is actually not getting any support from ownership.
Yeah. That's a wonderful point. And I think we'll often say pay because it's like the easiest thing to identify. And there is weight to it. Like when you don't pay me a lot as an employee, you're not taking care of my needs. You're not saying, hey, your needs come first here. But it can also be something that we can just very easily point to and say, oh, this isn't right. But that's a wonderful point.
And then Deb, did you have something, or did I miss that by looking the wrong?
No, I was just going to add on, Robert, and again, thank you very much. This has like been totally amazing. So just put that right up front.
Thank you.
Yeah, just like in relation to the empathy, an area that we don't really understand very much of in veterinary medicine is illness uncertainty. And so you just gave the perfect example of where you were caught within that situation of not knowing. And so the anxiety that it caused, including not being able to sleep, properly the night before and getting in there. So I think if we can find ways within veterinary medicine of recognizing illness uncertainty and then modifying our communication to be able to support that human experience that our clients have, to be able to help them to be able to reduce that uncertainty and help them manage it and cope with it, because it's there, it's a reality of the experience, but we don't know about that yet, I think, or recognize it. Like we hear a lot about empathy, but we haven't really heard much about illness uncertainty and how that is a lived experience. And yeah.
That's a wonderful.
The one thing I want to add really quick that came up in, so Bruce Truman and Carrie Marshall did a session at VIS where they actually broke out into groups and asked people to run their businesses if they were Amazon or they were Apple or they were something else. And one of the solutions that came up, I think, to your point, Deb, would be a really positive one. And that is one of the tactics that UPS uses and Amazon uses these days. Sorry, Bruce, as now he turns his camera on, is what I think is really interesting is, do you all now notice from UPS and Amazon, they're taking a photo of your picture at your front door, and they're saying that your package has arrived, it's at your front door, I've dropped it off. One of the solutions one of the groups came up with was, what if we actually told pet owners where you are in the queue? So the idea, instead of sitting there for an hour, Robert, waiting to find out what was going to happen, is that you knew that you were going to be seeing the doctor in 15 minutes, or that you knew something else was going to be happening next. Or if they had to take your dog to the back room, that they were very clear of, he's doing great, like this is so you were getting that ongoing communication. So I think there's a way to use technology to enhance our empathy, not to completely replace it, but I do believe that there's more to learn from organizations where they've been able to use technology to benefit when we can't rely on the humans to actually remember to use the dog's name or the cat's name, right? So to do the simple little things, but I think there's some opportunity there. And I got that from Bruce's section at VIS.
That's such a great point, Catherine. It's heartening to see all these companies doing really cool things around creating a truly customer-centric experience through technology, like Bruce's company, BabbleBark. Like that's so heartening to see. I remember when I thought Cole got a foxtail in his nose. He likes to worry me about every 6 months. It's this adorable thing he does. And so Cole had to be taken to the back and put under anesthesia. And the doctor said, okay, give me about 45 minutes. And like an hour and 15 minutes went by. And I'm like, oh my God, is he dying? Like, did he have a bad reaction to the anesthesia? Are they back there like trying to save him? Would they tell me what's going on? All this stuff running through my head. And then Dr. Jones walks out, who I love, by the way, and tells me, hey, Cole's fine. We couldn't find any foxtail. He's just waking up right now. You can take him home. So that was great. That was a huge relief. But how insensitive to my experience that was, and the possible stress and anxiety and uncertainty that the pet owner could be feeling when they think of their pet like family, by not knowing how their pet's doing. They can't see them. They just know something potentially dangerous could be happening in my mind. So if we could reorient this around thinking about the pet owner's experience at each successive stage of the visit, and even when they're away from the practice, that's where we're going to get to veterinary medicine 2.0. Like, I'm convinced that's where the future is.
Yeah.
So Robert, just to build on that comment, and sorry, Catherine, that I didn't have my camera on. I apologize. Peter Weinstein made a really relevant comment at the last AVMA Economic Summit. And there was a conversation going on amongst the full audience about these changes that we've been talking about. And it was an audience mostly full of veterinarians, right? And leaders in the field. And they went down this veterinary-centric path. And we can always rely on Peter to call us all out when we're off topic, right? Or off target.
Yeah.
And he got to the microphone. He's like, "You're all wrong. It is not about being veterinary-centric. It is about being pet-centric and pet parent-centric. And then how do we build, to someone's comment earlier, the experience around that, right? And that is what's so critically important right now, is how do we build this experience?
Yeah.
And I think we have to come up with a better term, slightly off topic, but perhaps relevant. We have to come up with a better term for alternate care models. So we've all been talking about, well, we think revenue is down in veterinary practices and visits are down, but price is up. We think that's going on because we're not measuring what's going on in what we call quote unquote alternate care models. So the VIPs, the shot vets, the thrives, just go down the list, right? Yeah. Many times those aren't measured in a lot of our industry reporting. So I think these alternate, Audrey at Zippy Vet in Austin, right? So I have to get into one of her practices, but what I've been told though, it's like going into an Apple store. That's the experience you have in her practice. Yeah. And I think that is all where we need to be thinking and where we need to be going.
I agree, Bruce. And those of you who know me well will not be surprised at all by this, but my veterinarian in Philadelphia is in an old restored farmhouse. And the minute you walk in the door, you are immediately taken to the exam room where everything is done. Your pet is seen, you know, anything that's minor, they can do in that room. You check out in that room. You know, if the technician has to walk away for a little bit, they come back and keep you posted on like where the veterinarian is. And then you leave that room once you've paid, you know, and Wrigley or whoever your pet is, you know, is fine and well and good. And they even give you this little cute canvas bag if you're taking any meds or anything home, because you know how hard it is to juggle the things that you're trying to carry out, right, when you're leaving the veterinary practice. So, I mean, they're an example, I think, of doing that high touch, high emotion, empathetic care extremely well. You know, I have to tout them every chance I get because they're just so amazing at doing that. And I wish more practices did that because I do truly feel cared for when I walk in there.
Yeah, that's such wonderful points by both of you, Bruce and Brenda. Thank you. And could I ask one more question of the group? I'd love to know, what do you feel like the best brands in the world are?
USA.
Oh, sorry, what was that? I missed that.
USAA Financial Services.
Oh, thank you.
They do have great commercials.
They treat you like you're royalty. And I've actually talked to people, executives at USAA that I met in different ways. I said, you know, you're really great company on this. Oh yeah. I mean, we train our people, you know, constantly, and the employees love working there. And it gets back to what you said about what Richard Branson said about treating your employees well. Yeah. But anyway, I mean, they're just, you know, layers above anybody else, in my opinion.
And I love that, Mike, because what you said, treating them like royalty, what is that? That's status, right? Yeah. That's all that is. That is fulfilling one of those 4 human needs better than anyone else. Like that, thank you. That's wonderful.
So I have a local one. It's called Motorworks, and they have everything from Porsche to Lexus to Honda all across. It's a brand here in Chicago, but they have a facility that is close by to my house that is actually being used globally of how they have built their automotive service stations so that people all across the globe are following this model. The place is immaculately clean. They have people that work 24/7 to keep the place super clean, and you are communicated with at all times about where your car is. Want to make sure, doesn't matter if you have the least expensive car there, they always offer you a rental car to drive if you need to leave your car. Doesn't matter. Everyone has equal status, if you will, when you go, and you are greeted every time with a handshake, and you don't have to go far. Like, they make everything super easy. They make sure that they've got lots of coffee and they've got snacks for you, etc. But there's just something about the fact that the place is pristinely clean, and you never feel like you have to take a shower after talking to a car guy. And I've just always been impressed. They charge more for me to get my oil done, but I always go back because that's where I bought the car, and they treat me well. And they always like, what else can we, do you need something else, whatever. And I just always find that to be, I would have never said that about a car dealer.
Yeah.
But I just find myself only going there. Oh, and free car washes any day of the week. Free car wash.
What if we treated everybody who walked through our doors like a celebrity?
Yeah.
What happened then?
That'd be crazy.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Like, because what you're saying, that's status too. That's saying you matter here. Like, somebody walking through the door, they make you feel like you're the only person in the room, and they say, we exist for you, and we're going to take care of you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So guys, we are getting close to our time. I am looking at it, and it's only because this conversation is absolutely phenomenal. I do want to give a plug to Robert's company, and the name of Robert's company is called Digital Empathy. So for those of you who do not know what Robert's company is, and he does put empathy in everything that he does. You will soon see his newest unveiling of the Bridge Club's website coming up soon, where our All Access members will have access to all of the video content at a click of a button. What? What? We're modernizing?
Get up with your mug.
Yeah, exactly. Woohoo! Yeah. So that's really critically important. So I do want to thank Robert. We'll give him a parting shot here, but I find this to be absolutely one of our most fascinating discussions. So I thank you so much, Robert, because this has been really helpful.
And great presentation, everyone. Truly, truly appreciate everybody being engaged. So,
Any thoughts, Robert?
Well, I just like to say, I think what matters as an industry where our work means so much and where lives are on the line, that if we can be real pioneers in designing experiences that are much more attuned to how people feel and satisfy those 4 major needs that we have: safety, status, belonging, and love. We're not going to be worried about consolidation and commoditization and all this different stuff. We're going to relate to people on a different level, and it's going to create a better world for animals and animal lovers.
Amen to that.
Amen.
All right, everyone, raise your glass. Thank you so much, everyone. Cheers. I am going to point out our new glass that we're making. Does everyone see our new glass? These beautiful ones that Brenda had made. They now have the etched. So now we have bourbon / whatever you want in a glass. So and we got our coffee cups, but we are moving a little bit to the other ones. So that's awesome. You guys, thank you. You all get, if you're All Access, you'll get this video link. If you want to be an All Access member, please do join. It's only $20.19. But we have some great stuff coming up, Brenda. We've got access to care coming up, and I know Cindy had to leave. She's going to be talking about being a relief vet. And then we also have an upcoming conversation, 2 that are going to be absolutely amazing. One, we are going to be talking about the breeder-veterinarian relationship. Totally excited about that one. And then we are going to be diving into the dog shortage. Is there one? Yes. So we're going to talk about it.
Did you say dog shortage or doctor shortage?
Dog shortage.
The dog
Oh,
shortage.
Yes.
yeah.
So we're going to be having that conversation. So we've got some really great stuff coming up in the next 35, 40 days. So we hope you all do come back. And thanks, guys. This is fun.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care, guys. Have a great evening.
Everybody.
Cheers.
Thank you.